Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Equipped to March, with WVU Chi Alpha. The hope of this podcast is to equip small groups with sound biblical teachings on God and how to walk with Him, and to equip the small group leader with the tools to lead as God has called them. We pray you are equipped and encouraged by this podcast in order that you can march well for our King on the college campus. Now, please welcome our hosts.
Okay, cool. Thanks for coming back. Welcome to the new year. We told you we'd be here.
Yeah,
It came through.
2021.
2021.
It'll be way better.
It's definitely going to be way better. Welcome back to Equipped to March. We're excited to be back with you guys again. We have our guest, Sean.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us today. We have the all-powerful star of the show, Christopher. And we kind of wanted to kick off the year with something that we kind of touched on a couple times last year. Kind of come back. It's been 2 months for some of us. Being back home, being out of, our routine and all these different things. And what we talked about last year a lot was appetite. And so we're kind of going to get back onto that. And so one thing that I wanted to know what you guys thought was, why does hunger matter? Why does hunger matter?
Hunger, like just being hungry in general, or hunger for God?
Yeah.
Hunger for God?
Either one.
Okay. Well, being hungry matters because, you have to eat to live. But also I think the same is true spiritually. Are you hungry for the things of God? And if you're not hungry for the things of God, or if you are, how does that affect your life? And I think kind of like a key verse that I've been thinking about, I think we've all been thinking about, is blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled, or satisfied, or whatever word you want to put there. And I think, why?
Or whatever word the Bible says.
Yeah, whatever word
Matthew
the Bible
chapter
says.
5. Yeah.
5 verse 6. But yeah, this idea, why is it important to be hungry? What does it mean to be hungry? For the Lord, I think is seeking after Him, and realizing that He really is the only one who can satisfy us.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of other things that we can fill ourselves with, but are they really going to satisfy us? Are they really going to give us a filledness where we don't have to keep going back to try and get something? And I think that hunger for the Lord really is not just hunger for Him, but Him being the one who fills that desire and that hunger. It really is the only one that's going to satisfy.
Yeah, I think every time I think about hunger or appetite, spiritually, it just is easiest for me to think about what it's like physically. And
absolutely.
Because
our bodies and our spirits are connected.
Exactly. Yeah. And the word hunger is most often used for food, but I think it applies the same way. For either one. And so, just thinking if I'm hungry for something, then that's what I crave, or that's what I most prefer, or what I most need, depending on how you're using the word hunger. I think a lot of times, when we say I'm hungry, it's not used in the I haven't eaten in 4 days, I'm hungry. It's I ate a couple hours ago and I want a snack. Which is okay. It's still, the right way to use the word hunger, but kind of breaking it down, just when I think about, okay, well, if I need to be hungry for the Lord, or, in the food sense, if I need to be hungry for healthy things to grow and be healthy, then that is different from I want 4 cookies.
Yes.
I never just eat one cookie. If I have one cookie, I'm having at least 4. I don't know.
A couple of guys were over the other day, and we were like, oh yeah, I'm starting to get hungry. It's all right, cool. Well, what do you want? All right, Sheetz or McDonald's? When you said that, I'm like, why eat? It's not gonna make you full, or it's not gonna make you less hungry. Yeah.
And so being in the U.S., where rarely, if you're a college student, especially have you're rarely at a loss for food.
Right.
You can eat kind of whenever you want.
Yeah.
And so I think, just thinking about like being hungry for the Lord, especially, makes me think like, well, what else do I fill like my mind and my soul with?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's stuff that kind of like chicken nuggets can hold me over, but it's probably going to be like 5 or 10 years before I realize that chicken nuggets were really kind of destroying me.
Yeah. Right.
And as long as I keep eating some chicken nuggets consistently, then like I'm temporarily numbing my body's actual need for nutrition. And so I think I can do the same thing with like with success. You know, if I want to be really successful, it could be 5 or 10 years feeding myself with success before I realize that like my soul and my mind and my spirit aren't being like fed with the nutrients that they need, which come from the Lord. I think like those two are kind of intertwined for me, physical and like spiritual hunger.
Yeah, right on.
What are then like I like that example of like success, and I'm just trying to like I guess thinking of like what are other, you know, quote unquote chicken nuggets in a spiritual sense or relational sense or whatever. What are like chicken nuggets that's like, man, or cookies, you know, and if I can get by on this, but I won't I won't thrive, I won't subsist on this for very long. Yeah. And then also I guess the flip side, like if, you know, there's bad things that we try and fill ourselves with, but what are like good things too? I guess like vegetables, you know, like the things that will sustain us.
Nutrients.
Yeah, like the nutritious things. And so I'm like you said success. I'm like, what do you guys like? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I think it's like appetite. So when we talk about appetite, you can be hungry for chicken nuggets. You can be hungry for sheets. But if that continues, then it is like an unhealthy hunger. And when you actually begin to eat what your body is truly, your body has an appetite. Not just, I think your mind has an appetite, and maybe your body has a separate appetite. You can do the science for that. I don't know. Yeah. But like I'm really wanting chips. Okay, my body is not crying out for chips. Maybe for a few days it is, but then I think, okay, well, what are the good things? And I mean, you said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Righteousness, like you were saying a couple of days ago, is right standing with God. And so I really think that there are a lot of things that I could fill it up with, but like what I really need to be eating, what my body and my spirit and my being is truly hungry for and will be satisfied by is right standing with God, is like hunger for God. And so I think like maybe junk food could be anything other than God, honestly. And probably talk about this later on, but like, I mean, literally anything else could be a substitute for like what's real and like what's healthy. I mean, even really good things like I don't know, like you asked it. So I think like community. I think community is a big deal. I think you will grow most in community. But I also think that if you just have community, that doesn't mean you're hungry for God. I think, you know, even the things that I do, like depending on my motive, going to church, going to small group, going to these things does not necessarily equal, but it doesn't necessarily equal hunger for God. And I think if my heart is, my appetite is for like, oh, I just want friends, just to have friends so I can go home and tell my family that college is great because I have friends. Well, then you're not hungry for God. Even if you go to small group, even if you go to church or whatever. And there's obviously like things that aren't good. Yeah. Like don't eat trash bags. Like, okay, yes. But
used
like,
or unused?
Either. Really, they're both typically not the best. But I feel like that's kind of easy. Like, yeah, anything that's harmful is like not going to be good. But I think what we kind of get caught up in is more like, oh no, I'm like, I have like this false appetite for God. When really what I want is like a selfish thing. Like, oh, I want a girlfriend, so I'm going to go to church because I want a godly wife, or I want friends who are going to stick by me that aren't toxic. So I'm going to like go to small group. And it's like, wow. So your motive to go to these things is inherently selfish. And I think
what you're hungering for isn't actually Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, but it's so easy to be like, oh, like, it's dividing between like, okay, like Jesus says, like that we should live in community. Like he lived in community.
Yeah, right.
But he didn't say that's the end all be all.
Right.
That's not what you hunger for.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to come out of hungering for righteousness, out of hungering to be in a relationship with him, right? That if you are hungering for God, then you should be in community. But if your ultimate end is like, I want friends, or I want to be known as someone who prays, or I want to be a leader, and that's like, well, I'm going to hunger to be a good small group leader or a disciple maker. That's still not the right thing to hunger for. But that's crazy because we're like, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, right.
And it is a good thing, but it's making a good thing an ultimate thing.
Right.
And when you make a good thing an ultimate thing, then it becomes an idol. It becomes something that God says, hey, I don't just not like this, I hate this.
Right, yeah.
And that the thing you should be hungering for is me. And I think this is something I was thinking about yesterday. God doesn't ask us to like hunger for him just because like, oh, well, I'm egotistical.
Right.
I just want you to love me. It's like, no, he knows that the not only the best thing, but the only thing that can actually satisfy us is him.
Right.
And that's why he says hunger and thirst for me.
Yes.
And it's just so crazy to think about that. Like he is actually concerned about you and me and Christopher and every one of us. He's concerned about our highest good.
Right. Yeah.
And he wants the best thing for us.
Yeah.
And he says, look, if you hunger for something other than me, it's not going to be the best thing for
right.
you. And that's just crazy to think about, like how endearing and loving that is of him. And the reality that he doesn't have to, ask us that. He could have just been like, figure it out on your own. And he's like, no, like, this is what's best for you, and I want the best.
That's so
for
cool.
You. And that's like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, like God. If I believe that God is loving, truly loving, then that doesn't mean that I just get to do whatever I want and he forgives me at the end of the day. Yeah. What that means is that he is wise enough to show me that he has he has my best interest in mind. And if my best interest was for me to do whatever I want and get away with it, then he would let me. But he sets up these guidelines so that I can live a life that is not damaging to me or others. And it's actually like, at the end of the day, I get him. And I think that reminds me of this verse. It's in the Gospel of John, chapter 17, verse 3. Jesus says, he's praying, and he says, "This is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent." And I think a lot of times we kind of think like, okay, I'm thinking about God. Typically our minds kind of wander towards heaven, right? Maybe like when I die or my grandma, or whatever. Like heaven is just kind of like usually thought of in the same breath as God. And so if eternal life is to get to heaven, then would I actually be happy with that? And I don't remember where I heard this, but I've like had this thought before of like, if you got to, when you die and you got to be around all your friends, everyone you ever loved, you got the biggest, freshest buffet of every food you like. There's a water park. There's also a mountain slope that you can ski and snowboard on. There's also a hiking trail, like everything that you've ever loved, everything that you've ever wanted, completely custom to you. Would you be happy as long as God wasn't there? And I think if we're not hungry for God, the answer is yes. And then we look at that, and anything that's apart from God is hell. And so we would be happy in hell if we are not truly hungry for God. Wow. But that's deception, because we would not be happy there, because we would be eternally away from the one that my soul is meant to have relationship with. My soul is meant to have an appetite for. We're not supposed to be hungry for just gross stuff. My body is made in a certain way that it ingests carbohydrates, fats, proteins in a certain way, and then nutrients and vitamins and all these different things. My body is made that way. My soul is also made that way. And I think that's a big kind of a check, but also kind of it's really not that hard to be hungry for God. and I think people are like, oh, well, I wouldn't get to be what I want to be or do what I want to do. And it's well, that's fine. You still get to be hungry for God.
And
that's what you're
better.
Yeah, it is
better.
It's
that's the reality. I don't think we realize a lot of times that there's something better.
Right.
And I think you were saying yesterday where it's you could eat chicken nuggets, or you could have a steak and the best much healthier, better food, but you're content eating dinosaur nuggets from Kroger. You know what I mean? It's you realize that that's not, there's much better stuff out there.
Yeah.
And you're but all you know is, well, I've been eating this since I was 4.
Mm-hmm.
This tasted so good. It's there's so much more out there.
Yeah. And that's cool that you said that last thing. Everything said has been great. What you just said made me think about this verse that I was thinking about. And it's Psalm 34:8, and it says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good."
Yeah, right.
So I grew up in the Catholic Church. I only remember we would sing the Psalms, and we sang this.
Oh, nice.
I want to sing it for y'all, but I'm not allowed to sing in public. So ask me later.
It's a great rule.
In private.
In private.
So backing away from Sean singing.
Sorry. Just made me think of that.
Psalm 34:8 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good," and it really is. It's cool because God's kind of challenging / inviting us to kind of wonder what life with him is like.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's basically saying test me.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm gonna prove faithful.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm gonna surpass your thoughts about how good I even was, in your own small mind. So just thinking about that, the things that I have chased after before, and have seen that, the things that I've tasted and seen that, or thought that they were good.
Right.
And not that they were inherently wrong, kind of to mention a few other things besides success, you were asking about, power.
Right.
People want to be powerful.
Yeah.
Fame. People want to be famous.
Yeah.
They want to have a lot of money. You want to have relationships. You want to be comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Or whatever it is. All of these things aren't inherently wrong. There are a lot of people blessed in the Bible by the Lord who had power, money, relationships. They were famous, whatever. But it's I think kind of going back to, last semester we talked about motive. Why do I do the things I do and who do I do them for? For me, I've realized that when I feed my flesh grows.
Yeah, that's right.
So whatever you feed is going to grow.
Right. Yeah.
So if I feed my flesh will grow.
Wow.
So even if by playing Call of Duty, so I can, feel the little controller rumble when I shoot somebody, and that's, increasing dopamine or whatever, I start to my flesh starts to grow because I'm satisfying that right. Hunger or thirst or whatever. And that after so long of doing that, that's going to affect how I what I want. I'm going to want to feed my flesh in other ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not going to be generous. I'm not going to be selfless. I'm not going to be loving because I'm going to be wanting to like feed my flesh more. And that's like really crazy to have seen. You know, so on the flip side, you know, if I'm like hungering and thirsting for the Lord, in right relationship with him, then like if he is really what's best for me, then I'm going to become like him.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be selfless. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be, just everything that he is. Yeah. Character wise, like, and so that's really cool. And, I think important to realize that like, it's not just about like what I believe, like what we were like made for, but also like, and Sean, said something about it the other day, like just having learned at one point that like thoughts lead to actions, lead to habits, lead to character, lead to destiny. So whatever you think about most ultimately becomes your destiny. Yeah. And so whatever I fill myself with impacts who I am. Yeah, that's right. And that's really crazy. So if I'm like trying to check out all the, you know, stuff that's going on in the US, you know, every single day and know the most about it, then I'm like filling my mind with chaos and people with power trips, or, you know, just agendas that may or may not be like for the betterment of humanity, but they also aren't necessarily inherently like biblically based. Yeah, you know, and so if I'm filling myself with all this stuff, then like, man, that's going to affect me. Yes. And that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think too, just to like build up what you were just saying, you know, like the thoughts ultimately to your destiny, like that doesn't have to be like that can change. And when you're saying Psalm 34, I wrote this down this morning because as I was thinking about it, you have to taste to know. You know, he says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." And I am a growing picky eater. Meaning I used to be very picky. I was Dino Nuggets only. And I've been growing, and but the thing, I look back and I shake my head at myself, and I have people that I know in my life that will do this, and they say, "Hey, do you want to eat some of this broccoli?" And I say, "Oh no, I don't like broccoli." And say, "Well, have you ever had it?" Yeah. No. Right. That's stupid. And I was that person for so long where I'd say, "I don't like this." Yeah. And then someone would say, "Well, have you ever tried it?" And I would say, "No." Yeah. And it's like, I have absolutely no clue whether I like it or not. Right. And I think that spiritually, so often we've done that, or we said, Jesus isn't for me. Right. Yeah. And we haven't actually taken this seriously and said, taste and see that the Lord is good. Yeah. And I think what was so encouraging, it's scary because what I think about right now, if my mind is consumed and all I hunger for is, like the political state of our world right now, then you're probably a pretty anxious person who has trouble sleeping at night, who probably gossips a lot, who is angry and bitter, condescending, right. and you know, if that resonates with you and you're like, "Oh, I am kind of like that," well, probably that's what you're hungering for, that's what you're feeling for yourself. Right. But what's great is that doesn't have to be. Yes, yeah, like, that's really good. Right now, if you keep going that way, then your destiny probably is going to be, you know, if you're hungering for something that's not Jesus, right now, that was the trajectory, but your trajectory can always change. Yeah. And I think a lot of it really does come down to the fact of like asking ourselves, have I ever actually tasted of the Lord? Have I ever actually tasted? And I think you were talking about this with like the fact that hungers can change. You don't always, I didn't always have a hunger for sushi. I love sushi now, but it developed. It took time. You know what I mean? I don't like very many vegetables. I didn't like salad. I love a couple salads now because I've developed that taste. You know what I mean? Right. And how much more so can we do that? Yeah, right. With Jesus, where we develop a hunger and we say, "Look, I'm not going to feed these other things, and I'm going to feed my hunger for Jesus. Right. I'm going to deprive myself." You guys are doing something right now. You're depriving yourselves of like
fried foods and sugar. Yeah. For the like added sugar. Yeah. We'll eat fruit. Yeah, because fruit has sugar. Yeah.
But yeah, like You can choose to say,
Yes.
I'm not going to feed myself with something that's not good for me.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we're like, well, I'm hungry for this, therefore that means I should eat it.
That's just who I am.
Yeah.
And I think if we define ourselves by our appetites, then you are in a really bad place.
Well, you are what you eat.
Or even just like, oh man, I'm really into, like, I mean, when you're a kid, like I was really into Street Sharks. I mean, I bet nobody even watched that. And I was like really into Street Sharks. I had like the Taco Bell toy, like the little hand puppet. I'm not running around talking about Street Sharks to everybody these days. I'm not like rollerblading and saying like, call me Jaws. Like, I don't have Street Sharks clothes. My appetite has changed now. I'm not interested in that. It's nostalgic. It's funny, but it's not like, I'm not like when I get home today, I'm not like putting on my hoodie and like pretending I'm a shark until, I go to bed. Like, that's so strange to even think about. And I think
Oak would think you're strange. For
he would. He'd probably love it. But think about like how much I just think so many people are so concerned about change when really what they are most averse to is growth. And it's illogical. It just doesn't make sense. And I've had friends, I've seen this in people where it's, well, that's just who I am. And I'm like, okay, but maybe that should change.
Yeah.
And if we are so grasped so tightly to who I am today, then yeah, we're going to be in bad shape. I mean, think about like, 10-year goals. Okay. When I'm 20, I want to, or let's say when I'm 15, maybe a sophomore in high school, I make like a 10-year goal, right? And then you're 24 and you're like really far off from having $1 million or being a fighter pilot or whatever you thought you would be when you were 15. Okay. And then you're just like kind of going through this crisis, like just depression and anxiety. How am I going to do this? I'm a failure. What 15-year-old do you listen to? Like,
there are laws that say that you actually need to like that they're not old enough to even like sign contracts,
right? Yeah, and I'm like, man, I don't think about a 15-year-old and think like wise. I don't think they're scum, but I'm not looking for life wisdom from a 15-year-old, truthfully. And I think if we just allow ourselves to think, okay, like you guys are saying, taste and see that the Lord is good. Maybe there's something in this. Maybe I don't know what's best for me. Maybe my mom doesn't know what's best for me, or my advisor, or my friend's dad, or maybe God knows what's best for me. Maybe.
And even the idea, it's like, well, if he's God, whether I believe in God or not, the idea of God,
right,
would assume that he knows best.
Yeah.
Why not? Taste and see.
Yeah, give it a
Why
shot.
Not,
give it a shot.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because you're never going to be hungry, like you were saying. You're never going to be hungry for. I've never had. Let's think. I've never had. $1
million.
No. I've never had caviar in my life. I've never had caviar. I don't particularly want it. It'd be kind of cool to eat because it's fancy. But I'm never going to develop an appetite for caviar by eating pepperoni rolls. I'm never going to develop an appetite for caviar by eating, anything other than caviar. And I think something that y'all are pointing at is like, yeah, you actually have to taste it. You will never have an appetite. You will never be hungry for something that you don't interact with, that you don't try.
Yeah.
And it is more, I mean, once you know God, it's more than just trying him. That doesn't work either. But like a good first step is that. And I want to kind of like see what you guys thought about this, but like it's like a story, so I'm not going to read it. But it's in Ezekiel chapter 47 somewhere. And there's this story where this guy it's like an angel basically, is like, hey, he measures out like a distance into this. It's this big old river, like really, really. It's almost like a lake. It looks like, because it's very wide. And he measures out a certain distance, and he tells the man, hey, why don't you walk in this far? And so he does, and it comes up, like the water comes up to his ankle, and then he's like, okay, now he measures out the same distance. He's like, why don't you walk this far? Right? Y'all know the story?
Yeah.
And it comes up to like his waist. And then, he measures it out again, and he says, walk out this far, and it comes up to his chest or his neck. You get the story. And I think that has to do with what we're talking about, because I think there's a lot of things, like we were saying, try, like taste, like there's a first step. Okay. And I think that first step is like a yes to God. So if like God is asking you to pray for the first time, saying yes to him is a taste, right? And that's why I kind of just want to like, I want everybody to understand that it will cost you everything in the end. But it's not complicated. Yeah. It really is so simple. It is so simple. And the more you feed your flesh, the more you say no to God, the harder it is, because it's this struggle. It's like you're warring, but the more you say yes to God, the easier it gets, because it's like, oh, I trust him. Like, right. He's got me, So like, I don't know. What do y'all think about that? Does that make sense? Or
yeah. I think like, I think one thing that we were talking about the other day, people would love is to be in the best shape of their life.
Yeah.
So to be this jacked, to be the like ripped beach body person, you know, and
every head in the room is like,
yeah. So you look at these guys that, guys or girls who have these like chiseled, 2% body fat bodies, and it's like you kind of dream about it, and then it's like being there yourself, right. And then it's like you basically give up on the idea, because it would take a lot of work.
Yes,
like these people have done in order to get there. And so just what you're saying about
and they do to maintain it.
Right, yeah. So they say yes to a certain amount of things to get themselves there, and then they say no to a certain amount of things in order to get there. They say no to things that aren't good for them getting there, and they say yes to things that are good for them getting there. And so like, Charles, with what you're saying about like hesitant to growth, and like it'll cost you everything. Like people who look like that have given everything.
Right.
For what it takes to get there.
Yes.
And it was, maybe they started off 400 pounds.
Right. Yeah. Who knows?
And they just took a step.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then, as time went on, it got easier.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't always easy.
Yeah. It's every day it's a choice for them.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But they get there, and like they gave up everything to get there. Yeah, and so I think like, yeah, just it's I just lost it. You can go, Sean.
Oh yeah. I just think of I think you're right. It can't just be, oh, I tasted, I prayed, God didn't really answer, so right. I'm giving up. That's like, yeah, you can go. You remember?
No, you keep going.
Okay.
It takes time. Your appetites don't change immediately.
Yes.
That's
right. Yeah, and so it's like it does have to be something. And I just think like, I'm like, okay, Lord, like I this is kind of like a funny illustration, but like if you're trying to fill yourself with something that's not the Lord, it's like having a giant hole in this bottle and it's just pouring out.
Right.
And you always have to keep, you're just constantly having to put something, right. And you're always draining.
Yes.
But when you give yourself to the Lord, I know it's not a perfect thing, but I think of those perpetual motion where you've got a cord that's coming back up and it's just always filling.
Yeah.
And it's always refilling, and it's always refilling. And so you're all, and it's this idea of like, oh, I always have to be hungry. Doesn't that mean I'm not filled?
Yes,
and it's like, no, it doesn't mean that. But I think Christopher is a visionary, guys. He's a dreamer, and it's so cool. But he was talking about this yesterday, that in eternity, like God is infinite, literally for all of eternity, for forever, we will be learning something new about God. So our hunger will be there, but it will always be filled. It will always be sustained. It will always be satisfied. Nothing in creation, no person, no Instagram post, no channel, no nothing can do what Jesus does. And it's that perpetual motion. But it does take, man, like, there's a hole in our hearts, and it's constantly leaking, and we're trying to fill it with something. Yeah. And it takes time to, okay, we've got to build this up. We got to loop it around. We got to connect it. And it's not just like, okay, I'm going to try God. That broccoli didn't taste very good, so I'm never going to eat broccoli again. Like, there are foods that I don't eat, mostly because it makes me sick. You know what I mean? But I could like broccoli.
Right, yeah.
I have chosen not to try to like broccoli. And that's my own fault. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times we do that with God. We're like, well, I tried him once, and he didn't come through. It's like, no. Like, if you want a hunger to change, if you want an appetite to change, it does take like a desire and okay, I'm gonna try for this. But this is the reality of like, man, nothing is gonna fill you like Jesus is gonna fill you.
It's so good, yeah.
Why would I want anything else?
Right. And I think sometimes we settle maybe like, oh, I tried God because I like gave money to this thing. Or like I tried God because I like my aunt was a Christian and she was like really rude to me one time. And it's like if we're talking about hunger for God, we're talking about like you interacting with God himself, not something less.
Not Christian things.
Right. Or even good things or things that I think should be godly. Like, and so I think that is like a really, really great point and to understand that God is ready. He's not scared of what we could ask him, and he stumped, or he's not concerned with what we might outsmart him on, or maybe my life has been really hard and he just doesn't have an explanation. I think he is I think he's big enough to handle what we have, and so if we are truly hungry for him, then he will fill us. And so I think whoever is watching this, like, you're in the right place. You are in the best place. I always say this, in Morgantown, to meet with God, because you're in a small group, and that is, you are with people who can help you. If you want to be hungry for God. If you don't want to, you're also in a good place. But you're not gonna get what you're looking for. But if you are hungry for God, like, you are surrounded by brothers, you're surrounded by sisters who can help that, who can guide you, who can do it with you. Maybe one step ahead, maybe one step behind, like, it doesn't matter. Go after God together, and you guys are you're gonna freak out, and you are gonna freak people out, and this campus, the city, is gonna be changed. I think that's good. You can finish if you want.
Just kind of like wrapping it up, the two verses that we hit most on, Matthew 6:5-8, and then Matthew 5:8, blessed are those who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness, for they will be filled. That's right. Jesus said that. He is a promise. That's right. And so it's not sometimes or never or maybe. It's all the time. You might have to take some time to get there, but it will happen. And then Psalm 34:8, 34:8, Matthew 5:6, Psalm 34:8, taste and see that the Lord is good, right. Not taste and see if the Lord is good. And so you just got to try him out. You'll see that he's good, not if he's good. And if you don't think he's good, then maybe it's something with myself. And that appetite can change.
That's good. Cool. Thanks, Sean, for being with us.
Absolutely. It's
and
fun.
We'll see you later.
Don't forget the discussion questions. They'll be in the link.
The description.
All right. Bye.
Bye.